3 bone-chilling true camping horrors in the Appalachian Mountains that haunt you forever. The fire crackled in the dark, but the eerie silence swallowed the glow, leaving shadows dancing between the trees. In the Appalachian Mountains, nature holds secrets too heavy to bear. Tales of horror echo through the valleys, whispered by the wind, teasing the wandering souls who dare to camp amidst their twisted trunks and hidden paths. 3 stories linger like ghosts, haunting the minds of those who hear them, crawling into their thoughts when darkness descends and the stars fade behind heavy clouds. The first chilling tale reveals a camper named Jake, who vanished without a trace. One moment he was with his friends, laughing and sharing tales by the flames. The next, he slipped into the woods, drawn by an unseen force. Days passed, and his friends scoured every inch, but Jake was gone. His laughter was replaced by a hollow silence that echoed back at them. They returned home, the weight of his absence hanging like a dense fog, but some say they still hear him in the rustle of the leaves, calling to them in his frantic search for help. Desperation hangs in the air, making every twig snap sharper, every breath louder, as if nature herself mourns his loss. Then there's the tragic story of Sarah, who only wanted a night under the stars. Her campsite was alive with laughter until it wasn't. The flickering flames revealed shadows moving unnaturally, circling her tent. She could feel the heat of fear gripping her chest as nighttime creatures began to whisper threats she couldn't understand. Her screams pierced through the trees, but the forest swallowed them whole. They found her tent slashed, her belongings scattered, but Sarah? She was nowhere to be found, leaving behind an unnerving void that still chills the hearts of those who venture too close. And finally, there's the tale of the phantom hiker. Local lore tells of a lost soul, a man seeking his way home, cursed to wander the mountains forever. Campers claim to see him, ghostly and pale, pleading with hollow eyes for someone to help him find his way. But no one dares to approach, knowing the legend: if you lend him your compass, you'll join him in his never-ending search, forever lost among the towering trees that seem to close in tighter with each passing night. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. But as night fell deeper and the wind howled like a mourning spirit, the campers could feel something watching them. Shadows darted between the trees, and the stories came alive in the cold night air. Tales of disappearances, of echoing laughter that felt too close, too real. With the fire flickering low, a sudden chill swept through the campsite, and a low, ghostly whisper filled the air. Help me find my way. What was real and what was just another tale twisted by fear? The night had only begun, and the mountains held their breath, ready to reveal their next horrifying secret. The air thickened, tasting of damp earth and dread. The campers huddled closer to the fire, eyes darting to the tree-line, where shadows flickered and danced like phantoms. They exchanged uneasy glances, the blood draining from their cheeks as the whisper floated through the darkness again, chilling them to their very bones. Help me find my way. Mark, the self-appointed leader of the group, broke the tension. It's just the wind, he said, but even he didn't sound convinced. He poked at the fire, sending embers spiraling into the night. We're fine. Right? But deep down, every camper felt the knot of fear tightening in their stomachs. They'd come for adventure, not to become part of a haunting legend. Laura, a newcomer to the group, hadn't grown up hearing these tales. What's that about? Her voice trembled slightly, betraying her facade of bravery. They'd shared some stories around the campfire, but the atmosphere had shifted with the arrival of that whisper. It felt all too real now. Ben, who had been quiet until then, leaned forward. You don't want to know. His voice dropped to a whisper. They say if you hear him, it's too late. His words hung in the air, thick and ominous, suffocating. The others shifted nervously, glancing at one another. Outside the circle of light, it felt like the trees were crowding in, casting skeletal shadows that twisted and turned. The fire crackled louder, refusing to be silenced by the weight of their fear. Just then, a low rustle from the brush startled them. They snapped to attention, hearts racing. Probably just a raccoon, Mark insisted, though he seemed less certain this time. But the sound persisted, low and persistent. It blended with the whisper, creating a chorus of unnerving noise that sent chills racing down their spines. "We should check it out," suggested Laura, an adrenaline-fueled bravery sparking in her veins against her better judgment. "No. Are you crazy?" Ben shot back, eyes wide. "We stick together. We can't split up." Mark held up a hand, trying to maintain some semblance of order. "Let us just stay put. It's probably nothing." But deep down, he felt the weight of the encroaching darkness. Suddenly, the whisper escalated, becoming almost frantic. "Help me find my way. Help me find my way." This time it was louder, echoing through the trees, penetrating their defenses like a knife. Before they could react, a figure stumbled into the clearing, wild-eyed and frantic. It was a man, his clothing torn and filthy, his face shadowed but unmistakably human. "Please. I need help," he gasped, collapsing to the ground, gasping for breath. His eyes darted between the campers, pleading for salvation. The group froze, fear and instinct battling within them. The stories came rushing back. This man, was he the phantom? Did they dare approach him? Mark shifted forward, his curiosity overcoming his fear. "What happened to you?" he asked, voice thick with uncertainty, but as the man looked up, something shifted in the air. The warmth of their campfire seemed to retreat, replaced by a freeze that gripped their senses. I can't," his voice cracked. "I can't remember, I don't belong, I'm lost." A wave of panic washed over them. Laura felt her heart racing. What if helping him meant losing themselves too? Was this man a victim, or was he part of the curse that tangled the woods around them? The rustle intensified again, as shadows crept closer. The trees whispered secrets that sent shivers down their spines. "You need to help him," said Laura, a mix of urgency and dread in her voice, but what she didn't know was how close they were to crossing a line none of them could return from. What choice would they make? And would it cost them their way back to safety? Just beyond their campfire's glow, dark figures shifted, waiting patiently, watching. The man on the ground scrabbled backward, his trembling hands clutching at the damp earth as if it might anchor him to reality. "Help me!" he shouted again, panic lacing his voice. His eyes darted to the shadows that danced beyond the fire's glow, and the campers felt a collective shiver run through them. Laura stood at the edge of the group, her heart pounding in rhythm with the frantic whispers that echoed around them. "Mark, we can't just leave him here. He's in trouble." She couldn't shake the sense that saving him might also save them from the encroaching darkness, but Mark hesitated. His instincts screamed at him to keep the group safe. "What if he's a trap?" he murmured, glancing rapidly toward the tree line. The shadows seemed to shift and deepen. "I don't know if we can trust him. Look at him. He's terrified." Laura insisted, stepping closer, the heat of the campfire flickering against her skin, urging her forward. The man's eyes locked onto hers, desperation shadowing his features. "I promise I've been running. Please," he gasped, and the wind seemed to carry an echo of his torment. Suddenly, from the woods, came an unnerving chorus of whispers, voices melding into a haunting harmony. "Too late, too late, too late," it sank into their thoughts, twisting like thorns, making their skin crawl. Ben's voice broke through the fear. "We shouldn't listen. We need to leave now." His eyes darted wildly, glancing between the shadows and the man, caught in a web of conflict. Mark clenched his fists, torn. "We can't abandon him, but what if he's leading us into something worse?" It felt like the air thickened even more, mocking their indecision. Without warning, the wind howled, sending the leaves into a frenzy. The fire flickered violently, casting erratic shadows as if alive. And then a movement behind the man. Dark shapes emerged from the tree-line, their forms twisting and elongating, merging with the darkness beyond. "Run!" shouted Ben, suddenly finding resolve as terror surged in his veins, but Laura couldn't move. Something in her chest anchored her in place. What if he is innocent? She cried, her voice breaking, desperately looking at the man beneath the dusk-heavy canopy. "Innocent?" barked Mark, his voice grating under the tension. "He is not the only thing out here. We don't know what that is." He pointed toward the shadows, dread clawing at him. In that moment, the man's face transformed from fear to grim realization. "You don't know." His voice dropped to a whisper, grave and foreboding. "They're here for you too." Shivers raced down Laura's spine as the dark figures slowly advanced, their forms flickering between the trees like wisps of smoke, ethereal yet ominous. Panic surged through her, every instinct screaming for escape. But the man's eyes held her, an unspoken connection binding them. "You have to choose," he shouted, urgency filling the air like a thick fog. They were trapped in a moment suspended between fear and compassion. Would they help their fellow human in need, or would they flee from a danger too great to comprehend? Breathlessly, they stood on the precipice of a choice that would seal their fates. The shadows broadened, and the whisper brushed against their ears with an agonizing insistence, taunting their decision. "Help me or join me." The wind shifted, cold fingers wrapping around their hearts. Just then, the crackling flames burst higher, illuminating a vision that made their blood run cold. A flash of faces they recognized, each one bearing a look of despair, and then, everything went dark. Nothing but silence, as if the woods had swallowed their cries, lay heavy and suffocating around them. What had they lost? And would they remain lost forever? With the fire now dying, would they find their way back to safety, or would they succumb to the haunting grasp of the darkness? The stillness swallowed them whole, an eerie silence lingering like a thick fog. Time felt suspended, as if reality had blinked out for an eternal moment. Laura's heart raced. She strained her ears, trying to catch any hint of sound amidst the suffocating quiet. But all she could hear was the pounding of her own heartbeat and the distant rustle of leaves. Flashbacks of the man's terror flickered in her mind, his desperate plea echoing like a call from the abyss. She wanted to scream, to shout for her friends, but the weight of their shared fear left her voice trapped in her throat. Huddled close to the fire, its dying embers no longer providing warmth, the group stared into the dark void that surrounded them. "Where did he go?" Ben muttered, his eyes wide, reflecting flickers of fear. "I can't see anything." "It's gone." Mark's voice was low, filled with dread. "Just darkness." Then, without warning, a shrill scream pierced the air, almost human, yet twisted, like a cry from a nightmare. It came from the tree line, sending icy tendrils creeping up their spines. "Did you hear that?" Laura whispered, the urgency in her voice trembling. "It's too quiet." "They're watching us," Mark said, eyes darting back and forth, searching for the shadows that threatened to consume them. Panic gnawed at the edges of his voice, making him sound more desperate than he wanted to admit. With every second, the darkness felt more alive, swirling with unseen threats. "What do we do?" Laura asked, glancing at the others. "We can't stay here, we have to find him." "Are you out of your mind? He could be leading us into a trap," Ben snapped, his voice harsh. The fear mixed with anger was palpable. "We need to find our way back to the car." "Listen to Ben," Mark interjected, his face pale. "We don't know what we've stumbled into, and we can't let it get us too." But before they could organize their escape, shadows flickered at the edges of the woods once more. A figure emerged from the darkness, a silhouette against the backdrop of menacing trees. It was the man, his face pale, eyes wide, drenched in sweat. But he didn't look terrified anymore. A cold smile stretched across his lips, twisting the concern they once felt into something they couldn't name. "Help you?" he called mockingly, voice dripping with malice. "No, you've already joined us." Welcome to the feast. The ground beneath their feet began to tremble, an unsettling vibration that surged through their bones. The air thickened, and suddenly, whispers escalated into a cacophony of voices, all coming together, filling the haunting chorus with frantic energy. Join the ones lost, join the ones lost. The wind shifted, blowing cold against their skin, taunting their resolve. What are you? Laura cried, backing away as dread swept over her. The figure stepped closer, revealing twisted features of countless faces intertwined into one grotesque mask. Just like you, it replied, laughter echoing around them, bouncing off the trees. You chose to stay. Now, you'll never leave. At that moment, the earth gave way beneath them, the fire extinguished, plunging them into darkness again, a suffocating blackness devoid of hope. Laura felt herself falling, tumbling into an abyss of despair, her scream swallowed by the void, and as the darkness closed in, she wondered, had they truly joined the feast? Were they forever lost in the suffocating cold of night? The ground beneath them shifted violently, and then, everything changed. Would there be a way out? Or had they sealed their fate with a single, fateful choice? Laura crashed into the ground, the impact knocking the breath from her lungs. The darkness enveloped her, heavy and stifling, and she desperately grasped at the dirt, the gritty earth grounding her momentarily. Pain shot through her body, but she forced herself to focus. The sense of dread that had been mounting still flickered like a dying flame behind her eyes. Ben? Mark? She croaked, her voice barely breaking into the thick silence surrounding her. Each name felt heavy, as if calling out would conjure the shadows lurking in the dark. Fear gnawed at her stomach, and for a moment, she wondered if she was truly alone. Laura. Ben's voice broke through the void, frantic and close. The relief flooded her chest like hot air rising within her. Are you okay? I think so. Where are you? A faint glow caught her eye, a flickering light in the darkness, pulling her toward it like a moth to flame. She crawled, hands grasping at rocks and roots as she propelled herself closer to the warmth. She could feel cold breath against the nape of her neck, and an icy claw of dread wrapped around her heart. Over here. Ben called again, the light growing brighter, revealing outlines of tree trunks towering in oppressive silence. Finally reaching the source, Laura stumbled into a clearing. The twisted forms of her friends came into view, huddled by a small, flickering fire that seemingly stood on its last legs, fighting against the darkness that threatened to swallow it whole. Thank God, Mark breathed, relief palpable in his voice. But as she looked into his eyes, the familiar light was replaced by a flicker of something darker. A sense of doom loomed. What happened? Ben's eyes scanned the clearing, vigilant. Did you see him? No, Laura said, pulling her knees to her chest, heart racing. But he laughed. Something is wrong. We need to get out of here. Out? Mark scoffed, a shaky laugh escaping his lips. Where exactly do you think we can go? This area isn't right. As if to echo his words, the air around them shifted, growing colder, sinister whispers winding through the trees like venomous vines. Join the lost, join the feast. The voices crept into every corner of her mind, suffocating hope, and amplifying fear. Stop it. Ben yelled at the trees, swinging a stick like a weapon. You think this is a joke? We didn't come here to be pawns in some game. Laura's heart thundered as shadows flickered in the periphery. Focus, guys. What are we going to do? Before they could decide, the ground began to tremble anew, and screams erupted as the earth shook, trees cracking and groaning in protest. A grotesque laugh reverberated in the air, surrounding them like an unseen predator. I said you're not leaving. The voice was thick with malice, blending with the shadows that coiled closer, weaving into human forms devoid of warmth. They twisted and contorted, whispering their chilling secrets. Panic surged within Laura. We have to regroup. Stay together. But confusion settled in as Mark staggered back, eyes wide. In that moment, he was no longer looking at his friends but at something else, something horrifying hidden in the darkness. No, it's coming at 1 let us go. Mark. Ben shouted, reaching for him, but before they could react, the shadows closed in, swallowing him whole, his scream echoing. Lost in the chaos, Laura's scream joined his, rising above the cacophony of twisted laughter and dark promises. Terror shrouded them, panic clawing its way through their minds. The fire flickered, its dying glow casting sinister shadows that danced across their terrified faces, and as everything went black again, Laura's fading thoughts turned to one desperate question: how many more would be lost before the night ended? Suddenly, the oppressive silence returned, and anticipation hung thick in the air. What horror awaited them in the silence? The silence dripped with unease, each droplet echoing like a distant heartbeat. Laura's breath came in ragged bursts, and the darkness felt as if it were closing in like a vice. In that moment of bleak stillness, she could almost hear the soft rustle of leaves, whispering secrets of the night. Those secrets sent shivers crawling down her spine. Ben? She whispered, voice trembling. The flickering fire's light cast eerie shadows that twisted and turned, unsure if they wanted to play along or escape into the night. Laura's stomach knotted tighter with every passing second. Where's Mark? Ben's voice cut through the darkness with wild desperation, but there was an edge to it, making Laura's heart race faster. I don't know. He was just here. Laura's words rushed out, panic flooding her senses. Was this really happening? One moment they were all together, and now the shadows had decided to claim him like a hunter with its prey. From the depths of the shadows, a gust of wind surged, swirling around Laura and Ben, enveloping them in a frigid embrace. Everything grew darker, and the fire's flickering light seemed to drown out, plunging them into near total blackness. And then came the laughter again, far and wide, echoing around them like a haunting melody from beyond. It was taunting, cruel. We have to move, Ben said, voice raw like broken glass. We can't stick around. We need a plan. Yes. A plan. Laura echoed, trying to solidify her thoughts amid the storm brewing inside her. But instinct told her they were running low on time. Every second that passed, the weight of fear bore down on her chest, tightening like a noose. Suddenly, a figure leapt out from the trees, stumbling into the clearing with its eyes wild and breathless. It was Mark, or what was left of him. Small cuts and scrapes marred his skin, and dread seeped into Laura's bones as she took in his halo of terror. It's coming, Mark said, voice cracking like old wood under the pressure of a storm. It wants us all, it wants our souls. God, Ben breathed, stepping back, the fear spreading like wildfire in his eyes. What did you see? A creature. It has no form, but I swear it can smell us. Feel us. It knew every fear we had, every regret. It wants to feed on our darkness. Tears streamed down his cheeks, mixing with the dirt on his face. We have to go. Now. No sooner had Mark said those words than the darkness seemed to throb, as if the night itself reacted to their fear. Laura's nerves tingled, adrenaline pumping through her veins in a frantic rhythm. Come on. She yelled, grabbing Ben's arm and pulling him toward the edge of the clearing. Their feet moved quickly, stumbling over roots and rocks, propelled by blind terror. The looming presence wrapped around them again, the shadows growing more alive, shifting, reaching out like claws, but as they pushed forward, moving deeper into the woods, Laura glanced back, dread pooling in her stomach. The fire was nothing but a dying ember now. And still, the laughter rolled over them, like a dark tide ready to crash in. Her heart sank like stone. Where do we go? Ben shouted, his voice cracking as they paused, the overwhelming sense of dread pressing down on them. Any place but here. She responded, her own voice rising higher than intended, fighting against the chilling wind. We have to find a way out. We have to. Laura's words cut off as shadows converged, forming into a swift wave of darkness, encompassing them, blocking all paths of escape. A whisper surged, so close that they could feel its cold breath on their skin. Stay forever! Panic surged once more, and the three friends pressed against each other, hearts pounding in sync. How could they escape the nightmare surrounding them? What price would they have to pay before they were free? The questions swirled like leaves caught in an autumn gust, vertigo threatening to consume them. Unfortunately, the shadow figures weren't finished. As the oppressive weight of despair wrapped tighter around them, a new thought clawed at Laura's mind. What if staying meant becoming one of them, one of the lost, feeding an ancient hunger that would never be sated? In a fleeting moment of clarity, she caught her breath and formed a desperate plea. We can't give up. Not now. The laughter faded momentarily, the darkness seeming to still, as if considering her words. And then, just as quickly, it surged forward again, but now, Laura wasn't ready to back down. Not yet. As the shadows closed in, her fighting spirit ignited, a spark in the vastness of despair. Stay close. She yelled, determination propelling her forward, the shadows snapping at their heels. But could they outrun doom before it consumed them whole? The fight had just begun, and the night had many more horrors in store. What do we do now? Came the quivering voice of Mark. Laura squared her shoulders, taking a deep breath to steady herself. The only answer she had left felt like a gamble. We face it together. But how? The answer loomed in the darkness, just beyond their grasp. Each passing heartbeat urged them forward, but the shadows watched, hungry and waiting what would happen next. The shadows pressed in closer, their outlines writhing with an unnatural hunger that sent jolts of pure terror coursing through Laura. The laughter faded, but the chilling silence that replaced it was no comfort. With each breath, she could feel the weight of darkness, palpable and suffocating, threatening to smother all hope. Which way? Ben's voice trembled, barely above a whisper. The bravado he had moments ago had evaporated, replaced by a panic that made his eyes dart around in search of escape. Up ahead, Laura pointed, her resolve battling against the instinct to run in any direction. There. We should try to get to that ridge. It might give us a vantage point. She forced her legs into motion, pulling Ben and dragging Mark with her, each step feeling more like an act of defiance against the swirling void. They pushed through the thick underbrush, branches clawing at their arms and faces, the ground uneven beneath their feet. Every rustle of leaves sent their hearts racing, every snap of a twig echoed ominously in the eerie stillness that followed. Just keep moving, Mark encouraged, though his voice cracked under the weight of dread. They were all terrified, but together this had to count for something. As the path became steeper, they climbed, the shadows falling behind them only marginally, almost reluctant to let go. But just as hope flickered in Laura's mind, a low growl emanated from behind them, deep and reverberating, causing her heart to plummet. She couldn't turn around. Not yet. The ridge loomed closer, the sense of pine and damp earth slicing through her mounting fear, grounding her just as the laughter began anew, mocking them from the depths of the enveloping night. Go! Faster! She urged, scrambling, half-leaping for a foothold. The creature, that thing from Mark's nightmare, was on their tail. Its hunger was palpable, the air thick with its desire to claim them. And as they reached the ridge, with a final surge of adrenaline, Laura felt a rush of cool air brush against her, almost beckoning. They stumbled onto the rocky outcrop, panting, hearts racing against the gathering darkness. The sky sprawled above them, a shroud of stars twinkling like distant eyes, ignorant of the nightmare unfolding below. But the ridge didn't offer safety, not yet. Do you see it? Ben gasped, scanning the tree line. It's hiding, Mark said, shaking. We have to focus, it's part of the shadows. It's always been there. Laura squinted into the dark expanse, pulse throbbing against her temples. We need light. We need to illuminate it. Are you crazy? Ben snapped, horror creeping into his tone. What if it sees us first? Then we'll see it too. Laura retorted, flicking her flashlight on. The beam shot out, sharp against the blackness, illuminating the twisted trunks and jagged crags. Then it caught a glimpse. A movement, quick and ethereal. The laughter crescendoed again, swirling like wind through the hollow spaces between trees. "What is that?" Mark hissed, clutching Laura's arm as they all turned to face the growing darkness, the shadows shifting in a macabre dance. "It's Laura," began, but the words faded on her tongue as the shadows collided together, forming into something grotesque, a figure born from the depths of nightmare and despair, eyes gleaming like distant stars but hungry like famished beasts. Laura's stomach dropped, fear rising into her throat. "Run!" she shouted, though every instinct screamed at her to freeze. They sprinted along the ridge, breathless, desperate. The howl of wind behind them mingled with disembodied whispers, a tide of fury rising. But as they pushed forward, the shadows grew more chaotic, swirling around them, pulling at their limbs, at their minds. Dread etched on Ben's face, he glanced back. "What does it want?" "I don't know." Laura screamed, tearing her gaze away. "And I don't want to find out." The end of the ridge was approaching, their only chance was to jump. Below, the darkness awaited, its hold tightening, inviting, and they had no choice left. They paused for just a moment at the precipice, faces flushed with terror, as the shadows reared closer. The whisper came again, louder. "Stay forever," and with a final push, they leapt. But were they running toward salvation or plunging into despair? In that split second of weightlessness, the question hung heavy in the air, locked in silence, awaiting the inevitability of what would come next. Would the shadows consume them both as they landed with the earth-shaking thud, or would they find a way to shatter the fear that sought to engulf their souls? The answer loomed, waiting to reveal itself beyond the plunge. The moment they landed, a shockwave of pain shot through Laura's legs, the ground hard and unforgiving. She rolled and pushed herself up, adrenaline driving her forward. Ben and Mark hit the ground beside her, scrambling to their feet, eyes wide with terror. Did it follow us?" Ben panted, breathless as he glanced back toward the ridge. The laughter had morphed into a low rumble that echoed among the trees, chilling them deeper than before. It was a sound that twisted the insides, stirring fear of the unknown. "Keep moving," Laura urged, urgency clawing at her throat. She didn't want to think about what might be hiding in the darkness behind them. The shadows felt alive, crawling through the underbrush, hungry for them. They dashed deeper into the forest, branches snapping and scraping at them, trying to slow their escape. A mist began to settle around them, thick and swirling like a creature in its own right, wrapping them in a cold embrace. It was almost as if the forest itself had eyes, watching, waiting. "What are we supposed to do now?" Mark shouted, panic rising in his voice as they stumbled through the damp ground. "Just find a place to hide," Laura shouted back, glancing over her shoulder again. There was this mounting feeling of being hunted, the primal instinct screaming to evade whatever was in those shadows. Suddenly, Ben stopped cold. "Wait. I think I heard something." His voice trembled, a mixture of fear and curiosity. "Don't stop," Laura snapped, pulling him by the arm. "We need to keep moving." But something rustled nearby, branches cracking in a different rhythm. They all froze, terror spiking as they turned to face the sound. "That's not us," Mark whispered, eyes darting around wildly. The laughter returned, a haunting melody that swooped around them, wrapping them in dread. "Laura!" Ben hissed, backing away slowly. "There's something over there." Her heart hammered as she turned, squinting into the darkness. The flashlight was flickering, struggling against the creeping fog that thickened the air. Suddenly, shapes began to emerge from the shadows, a wave of dark silhouettes, gliding closer. "Oh God," she mumbled, fear turning her voice into a tremor. "We have to go now." They broke into a full sprint, feet pounding against the ground, heartbeats pounding in sync with the chaos around them. But no matter how fast they ran, it felt like those shadows were always there, closing in, tightening with each breath they took. "Is it trying to trap us?" Mark shouted, breath hitching, frustration mixing with fear. Laura had no answers, not now. They burst through the trees into a clearing. The moon hung above them, casting an eerie glow on the ground. But it wasn't the moonlight that was catching Laura's attention, it was the huge, gnarled tree in the center, a giant twisted mass, its bark resembling anguished faces reaching out to her. "Guys, look." Laura pointed, unable to contain the fear rising in her throat. Beneath the tree, the ground was littered with bones, small animal remains mingled with what looked almost like human bones. It was a grotesque altar dedicated to whatever terror lurked in the woods. As if summoned by their horror, the laughter faded, replaced by whispers soft and sibilant, echoing through the clearing. "Join us, stay with us." Mark took a step back, eyes popping wide, fear paling his face. "We have to leave. Now." But before they could move, the shadows seemed to waft toward them like fog, curling around their feet, pulling them down. They fought against it, desperation clawing through them. Each of them trying to pull free, but it was relentless, pulling them closer to the clearing's center. The whispers became louder, more insistent, no longer feather-light invitations, now demands that rattled their very souls. Then they heard an ominous crack above them. They looked up just in time to see a branch snap, splintering into pieces as something massive loomed overhead, blocking out the moonlight. "Run! Now!" Laura yelled, blindly leading the charge back toward the tree line, but the shadows bellowed, furious in their denial. "You cannot escape." As the darkness clung tighter, Laura felt the panic begin to blur her vision. Were they racing toward safety or deeper into the abyss? The chilling thought clawed at her mind, what if this was where it all ended? Their chance to turn and flee was slipping away, and the shadows were ready. Would they find a way to break free, or had they stepped into a nightmare they could never wake from? The trees darkened around them, thickening and choking the light. The climax loomed, and reality began to fray at the edges. What waited in the depths of those shadows? Would they ever emerge? Branches whipped past them as Laura led the way, Ben and Mark right behind her, their breath forming clouds in the cold night air. Panic spurred them onward. The shadows were relentless, curling around their ankles like serpents, trying to drag them back. "Faster!" Laura urged, but her own legs felt heavy, each step pulling her down. The whispers had morphed into a cacophony of indistinct voices, and every time she glanced over her shoulder, she half expected to see the grotesque figures emerging from the mist. Then, in a heartbeat, the path they had known disappeared behind them. The trees towered high now, unfamiliar and twisted, their thorny branches grasping like claws, threatening to snatch them. It felt as if the forest was reshaping itself around them, trapping them further. "Where are we?" Ben gasped, panic clearly etched across his face. "I don't know. Just keep moving." Laura cried, squeezing her eyes shut for a second, pushing back against the dread that surged through her. Then, it happened. The ground shifted beneath them, a rumbling tremor that made the earth groan. They stumbled, feet twisted on the slick, damp floor as if the land itself was conspiring against them. The laughter rang out again, louder and more menacing, echoing through the woods. It wasn't just a sound anymore, it felt like it was inside her head, a devilish murmur. "Laura, look!" Mark pointed to a flickering light in the distance. It was faint, almost like a beacon pulsating through the fog. "Is it safe?" Ben asked, weighing hope against despair. "Only one way to find out," she replied, determination hardening her voice. There was no other option. They sprinted toward the light, each step a prayer that it might lead them to safety. As they drew closer, the figures in the shadows seemed to thicken, almost clawing at the edges of the illumination, their shapes elongated and twisting in grotesque ways. Laura could feel the shadows stretching, trying to pull her back as they raced forward. Then they reached a small, circular clearing encircled by ancient stones. The ground was solid here, a contrast to the treacherous swamp they had just crossed. The light was emanating from a small fire, flickering with strange blue flames that danced and shimmered, casting eerie shadows across the clearing. But it was the figure seated next to the fire, the woman draped in dark robes, her face hidden beneath a thick hood that sent chills crawling down Laura's spine. "Welcome, travelers," she intoned, her voice smooth but icy, turning their relief into dread. "Who are you?" Mark managed, setting his jaw, ready to run if he had to. "The guardians of this forest," she replied calmly, as if she had been expecting them. "You've stumbled into a place where the living and the dead mingle freely. Those shadows you flee, they want something from you." Heavy dread seeped into Laura's heart. "What are you talking about?" "We just want to get out of here." The woman looked up, her eyes glowing with an unnatural light. "The forest demands a tribute. It is hungry. And now you must choose." Laura felt a lump in her throat. "Choose what? Who will stay?" The woman pointed a long, bony finger at each of them, meeting their terrified gazes. The fire crackled ominously, and the weight of the choice hung heavy in the air. Laura felt the shadows creeping in closer, whispering promises of eternal peace, of escape, laced with a clawing hunger. A frantic urge surged through her. Could they actually make it out of this hell? Or was this where it would end, a cruel game played with their fears? Before she could process the implications of the woman's words, the shadows lunged forward, hungry voices now shrill and demanding. Laura screamed as Ben and Mark gripped her tightly, the decision looming like a specter before them, but as the shadows swept closer, a bang echoed through the trees, something crashing from above. The dark woman's expression shifted, surprise flickering in her eyes as chaos erupted. What had just joined their horror? The tension twisted tighter, reality splintering again. As the ground rocked beneath them, everything hung in the balance. Would they escape the shadows? Or would they become part of the forest's twisted legend? Would they succumb to the forest's desires, or fight to break the silent pact that loomed over them? The night was far from over. The chaos erupted around Laura, Ben, and Mark as the shadows seemed to momentarily hesitate. The weight of the woman's words pressed heavily against them, but the crashing sound had created an opening, a chance to escape. "Run!" Laura shouted, and panic drove them forward. They dashed past the hooded figure, leaving behind the flickering blue flames and the haunting choice she had stated. Each pounding footstep echoed with a rushed determination, the shadows swirling and grasping at their heels as if alive. In the deep brush of the woods, they scrambled through thickets and thorns. Breathing hard, Laura focused on the sounds of the forest, hoping their flight would lead them to a way out. "We can't stop," she urged, looking back to see the shadows coiling behind them, angry wisps wrestling with the air. With adrenaline coursing through her veins, she pressed on, forging deeper into the ever-thickening forest. Behind her, Ben stumbled, but before Laura could look back, Mark reached out, hoisting him back up. "Keep going," Mark shouted, as an icy breeze gusted through the trees, urging them onward. Then, something shifted. Out of the corner of her eye, Laura spotted a break in the trees, a clearing. "There!" she yelled, hope cresting like a wave. They raced toward it, desperate for safety. The moon broke through the dark clouds, illuminating a frightened-looking deer frozen at the edge of the clearing. "It looks scared too," Laura breathed, her heart pounding now in sync with the creature's terror. When they burst free into the open, the shadows faltered, as if the moonlight had stung them. Laura's breath came in gasps, and as they steadied, she turned to her friends, their faces drawn with fear. "Did we lose them?" "I think, maybe," Ben said, panting. But the relief was short-lived. A low growl erupted from the tree-line, and panic washed over them again. "What now?" Mark rasped, glancing around for any potential escape routes, his eyes darting wildly. "Look!" Laura pointed. Just beyond the clearing was a path, dimly lit and winding away from their encroaching doom. "We can make it." Without hesitation, they sprang into action. The deer bolted, and they followed its retreat. With each step, the oppressive darkness seemed to fade slightly, spilling away into the night. "Just keep moving. Don't stop," Laura shouted, already feeling the panic surge back. The whispering voices, low and insistent, tried to creep back into their heads, but Laura locked her focus on the path ahead. The trio emerged onto a rocky trail lined with bright moss, the ground beneath them firm and solid. "Is that a cabin?" Mark pointed, relief flooding through him. There, nestled against the backdrop of the mountains, was a weathered hunting cabin, a beacon amidst the horror that had consumed them. "Let us get there," Laura urged, sprinting toward it. They reached the door just as the growl rang louder, an echoing snarl that rattled the very core of their beings. They flung open the door and rushed inside, slamming it shut behind them. Inside, the air was stale, layered with dust and time. Darkness loomed, the only light from moonbeams filtering through cracks in the wooden walls. The silence was deafening. "What do we do now?" Ben gasped, glancing nervously towards the door. "Do we have anything to defend ourselves?" Laura asked, her voice trembling as she scanned the sparse room. A rusted hammer lay on a workbench, and beside it, an old lantern. "Grab that." She grabbed the hammer, feeling the weight of it settle in her hand. "We might need this." Mark stepped to the window, peering through the grimy panes. "They're out there, lurking. Can't see much, but I can feel them." His expression was grave. The shadows did not simply retreat. They would find them again. As if summoned, a rushing wind rattled the cabin. The door buckled under a sudden fierce force, splinters of wood and shadow yawning through the cracks. Their hearts raced as they backed away. "What are we going to do?" Ben shouted, instinctively moving closer, clustered into the small space of remaining light. "That woman told us there." "Be a choice," Laura reminded them, adrenaline still spiking. "But we've made it this far. We can't let fear choose for us." "What do you mean?" Mark glanced back, his brow furrowed, anxiety lined in each crease. "We could fall prey." "No." Laura shot back, determination coursing through her. "We refuse to become like them. We need to fight our way through." The wind howled again, a whisper barely audible, "Join us, join the feast, shut it out." She cried, shaking her head. "We fight for each other. We face this together." Suddenly, the door cracked open, shadows inching in like dread, curling like smoke around them. "Now!" Laura shouted, igniting the lantern and throwing it toward the bottom of the door. Flames flickered and erupted outward, catching the edges. The air grew thick with smoke as the fire began to push the shadows back, until it roared with life. It's working!" Ben shouted, eyes wide with newfound hope. The shadows recoiled in simmering fury, twisting against the firelight, almost agonized. As the cabin erupted into an inferno of light and warmth, Laura felt the weight lift from her shoulders. "This has to work." With renewed purpose, the three friends pushed toward the back window, the blazing light trailing behind them like a shield. As they pushed through the opening, they felt a sudden surge. The shadows lunged forward, but it was not enough. The fire had truly pushed them back, now swirling in moments of fury outside. "Go! Go!" Mark shouted, dropping down into the grassy underbrush just outside the cabin. Laura followed, Ben close behind, and they sprinted away from the blaze and into the night, feeling lighter, as if they had escaped a grasping hand. As the last of the flickering shadows melted into the darkness, adrenaline surged through their veins. They ran farther down the path, the cabin now a blurred silhouette behind them, the final sounds crackling in smoldering fury of victory, not in the absence of fear, but in the defiance against it. Finally, panting and overcome with relief, they found themselves in a clearing where the moon shone bright and clear. It felt surreal, the weight of dread they had been carrying dissolved into the wind. They had faced the darkness and made it through. With a shaky laugh, Ben glanced back to the stars glinting overhead. "We did it. We really did it. We're safe," Laura breathed, heart finally steadying, glancing at her friends. She felt gratitude surge within her, connecting them through this harrowing experience. But as they stood together, shadows still danced around the edges of their minds, whispering that night would come again. Who knew which dark secrets lurked in the corners of the sleeping woods? For now, they were alive, together, an indestructible bond forged in the fires of fear, and they vowed to carry that light, wherever they went. As dawn began to peek over the horizon, the sun broke through like a promise made to those who dared to brave the darkness. They would carry their scars but also the victory within their hearts. "Let us get out of here," Laura finally said, leading the way. And as they walked toward the rise of the sun, they whispered unbreakable vows, knowing that together they could face anything the night could ever throw at them again. Their adventure may have ended, but they understood it was only the beginning of facing whatever else lay ahead. And for all the dark that lingers, they would always choose to keep the fire burning bright. Now, if you enjoyed that wild conclusion to a chilling tale, here's your moment to act. You need to subscribe now to the channel. Don't miss out on more exclusive stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Smash that like button right now to show your support and help feed the algorithm, and flood the comments below with your thoughts, reactions, and theories about this ending. Let's hear how this story affected you. Finally, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to face the terror with you. Don't wait even one more second. Let us build this amazing community together.